Hi, my name's Madeline. I spent $5,500 on Christmas dinner, private room, wine pairings, everything they asked for. That night, my whole family sent one group text. We need space. Don't contact us. No reason. No warning. Just goodbye. Then my sister messaged me directly, called me a walking ATM. They erased me from their lives. But they didn't stop using my name, my credit, my silence, and when I finally opened the files, what I found wasn't just betrayal. It was theft, dressed in blood ties. But what do you do when your entire family cashes you out, and you were the last to know? Christmas Eve in Seattle had always held a certain chill, but that night, the cold wasn't just in the air, it was in the room. Queen Anne's most elegant Italian restaurant, with its mahogany booths and golden lights, was buzzing with holiday cheer. Families dressed in red and green, kids clutching candy canes, couples leaning in close over candlelight. I stood at the hostess stand, receipt in hand, confirming a reservation for 14, paid in full, $5,500, tip included. "Right this way," the hostess said with a polished smile, as if she hadn't just seen my Amex tremble slightly between my fingers. I followed her to a long table tucked near the frosted window, close to the back exit. One of those spots restaurants reserve for guests who booked late or who didn't quite fit the mold. I set down my purse, straightened the chair napkins, and started arranging the menus for everyone. I knew the drill. For years, I had become the unofficial event coordinator of the Addams family, except no one ever called me that. I was just Madeline, the youngest, the quiet one, the one who could be counted on to pay for things, arrange things, make things happen, quietly. By 7:15, the others began to arrive. Callista, in her fur-lined coat and overly dramatic eyeliner, greeted the room like she owned it. My brother and his wife slipped in behind her. Mom and Dad followed, looking around as if trying to spot celebrities. "Hey," I said, waving from the corner. Callista's eyes swept over me. "Oh, you're here already." She sat at the center of the main table. Everyone else followed suit, filling the seats around her. No one sat near me. I was still at the overflow section, a side table meant for last-minute add-ons or the unwanted guest. I waited for someone, anyone, to ask me to scoot over. Instead, my brother laughed. "Looks like Maddie's running logistics again, just like always." I smiled politely. What else could I do? The waiter approached. I gave him the green light to begin the pre-selected wine pour, and he nodded, already aware of the details. I'd arranged it all weeks in advance. Appetizers, main courses, wine pairings, desserts for the kids, vegan options for Callista's new cleanse. Every dollar thought through, every choice made so they wouldn't have to. The evening unfolded like a play I'd seen too many times. Callista talked about her recent partnership with a lifestyle brand. Mostly wellness, nothing too commercial. My brother shared some inflated story about a promotion that never happened. My parents beamed at them, laughed at their jokes. I listened, ate in silence, refilled their wine when the glasses got low. At one point, Dad stood up with a glass of red and tapped his fork gently. "Let's raise a toast," he said, "to family, for always being here, through thick and thin." Everyone clinked glasses. No one looked at me. By 10:30, dessert plates had been cleared. The waiter brought the bill, but I waved him off. It had already been settled. Still, no one mentioned it. Not a word, not a thank you, not a nod. It was as if the food and drinks had materialized out of nowhere. As I grabbed my coat from the back of my chair, I glanced one last time at the table. My mother was scrolling through her phone. Callista was reapplying lipstick using her front-facing camera. I pulled out my own phone to call an Uber, but before I could tap the app, a notification buzzed in. Group chat. The Addams. "Mom, we need some space from you. Please don't contact us for a while." I froze. Within seconds, Callista reacted with a string of confetti emojis. My father gave the message a thumbs up. The air in the restaurant grew heavy. The laughter from nearby tables sounded muffled. My ears started to ring, not from anger but from something colder. Numbness. I stared at the screen, reread the message. We need some space. Not let's talk. Not we're concerned. Just space. Don't contact us. No explanation, no context, no grace. I set the phone down on the white tablecloth, folded my scarf, and stood. Walked out through the side door, past the valet, past the doorman, past the lights strung around the patio heaters. Outside, the December air bit through my coat. The sidewalks were slick with rain that had frozen in patches. I clutched the dinner receipt in one hand, still folded from earlier. The paper was slightly damp from my palm. I glanced up at the lights of the Space Needle in the distance, twinkling above the city. Christmas Eve. I'd spent $5,500 for a seat at a table where I no longer belonged. And now, apparently, I wasn't even invited to the group text that included love. I looked down at the receipt again. The ink was starting to blur. So this is what $5,500 bought me, I whispered. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching headlights from passing cars flicker across the walls of my condo. The room was still decorated with holiday lights I'd hung out of habit. They blinked in rhythm, like a metronome counting down to the next blow. By the time dawn broke over downtown Seattle, I hadn't closed my eyes once. My phone was still on the nightstand, the last message from my family still glowing on the screen. We need space. Don't contact us for a while. I sat up slowly, my limbs stiff from being in the same position too long. I slid my feet into the slippers I'd bought myself last Christmas, the only gift I'd received that year, and walked to the kitchen. I didn't want coffee. I didn't want breakfast. What I wanted, more than anything, was to understand. No missed calls, no voicemails, no Merry Christmas texts from Mom. Just silence. That sharp, deliberate kind of silence that doesn't just sting, it screams. At 8:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. I flinched. For a moment, I hoped. Maybe someone changed their mind. Maybe it was Dad, or my brother. Maybe they realized how cruel that message was. But it wasn't. It was Callista. A private message. Honestly, Maddie, you're just a walking ATM. You pay, but you're always judging us. My thumb hovered over the screen. I read the message once, then again, then a third time, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Walking ATM. That's all I was to her. My breath caught in my throat, not from shock, but from clarity. A clarity so sudden, so piercing, it was almost liberating. I set the phone down, walked to the window, and stared out over the rainy streets below. A city waking up to Christmas morning. Strangers hugging, laughing, carrying paper bags filled with gifts. And me, standing in silence, finally seeing my role in this family for what it truly was. Not the peacemaker, not the responsible one, not even the dependable youngest. Just the bank. It hit me all at once. Every dinner I'd hosted, every rent check I'd paid for my brother, every spa day I'd covered for Callista, every overdue electric bill I'd silently resolved for my parents. All those moments where I thought I was buying love, buying safety, buying a place in their circle. Turns out, I was only ever buying time. I needed to get out of that apartment. I needed air. I threw on a sweater, grabbed my keys, and walked a few blocks through Capitol Hill toward a nearby park. The wind whipped against my cheeks, numbing my face. The city was quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that only comes once a year. Every step I took seemed to match the rhythm of a new thought forming in my mind. They didn't cut me off because I was harsh. They did it because I asked for something they weren't willing to give. Accountability. 6 months ago, I remember asking Dad about Grandpa's estate. It was a passing question, nothing confrontational. Hey, has there been any update on the will? I haven't seen anything since last year. He shrugged, barely looking up from his newspaper. Callista's handling it. I let it go then. I shouldn't have. Back at home, I powered up my old laptop, the one I used for personal documents. I logged into the shared family Google Drive. I hadn't checked it in months, not since the last vacation photo dump. I started scrolling through folders, photos, tax documents, recipe PDFs. Then I saw one labeled Trust Revised Final. My stomach dropped. I clicked. The document opened, and right there, on the front page, under Executor of Estate, was Callista's name, highlighted in red. I scrolled down. The original draft, dated the year Grandpa died, listed me as one of the beneficiaries equal to my siblings. But in the revised version, my name wasn't there. Not once. Not in the assets. Not in the notes. Not even as a backup trustee. Erased. Not ignored. Not overlooked. Deliberately removed. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, the rain pattering softly outside, the holiday lights casting a dull glow over the living room. I couldn't decide what hurt more, the fact that they took me out or the fact that they didn't think I'd notice. What kind of people edit someone out of their family legacy and don't even bother hiding it? People who never saw me as family to begin with. I pushed the laptop away and stood up, pacing. My mind raced. This wasn't just about the money. It was about what the money represented. Every check I'd written was a silent plea. Let me belong. Every bill I paid said, see me. Every holiday I hosted screamed, please let this year be different. But nothing changed. I opened a new spreadsheet. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I began to type. Total contributions to family, last 5 years, $1,200. Car repairs, Dad, $3,000. Back rent, brother, $6,750. Spa weekend, Callista, $2,200. Utility payments, parents, $5,500. Christmas Eve dinner, 2022. Line after line, I added every dollar I could remember. It was staggering, not just the total, but the frequency, the ease with which they had asked, the speed with which I had said yes. As the list grew longer, so did the pit in my stomach. They didn't love me, they needed me, there's a difference, and now, they didn't even need me, they'd moved on, found a new bank, or decided they could live without one. I closed the spreadsheet, saved it under a new folder called Evidence, and stared at the title. Evidence, not memories, not moments. Evidence, they wanted space. Fine, I'd give them distance they'd never close again. I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the rain had turned into a mist, soft against the window. It was still Christmas Day, but the kind that didn't smell like cinnamon or roast turkey, just wet pavement and a gnawing ache in my chest. My coffee had gone cold. Again. I took a sip anyway. I couldn't remember the last hot cup I'd finished without interruption. I opened another document, not one for the numbers this time, just words. I needed to see them, not just feel them. They didn't forget me. They removed me. The sentence stared back at me like a final verdict. But it wasn't sudden. No, the distance didn't come overnight. They'd been peeling me away one event at a time, a quiet erasure dressed as oversight. Spring, 6 months ago. I remember sitting on my sofa with a bowl of takeout and scrolling through our family group chat. A stream of pictures had popped up. My nephew's graduation, cap, gown, the classic thumbs-up pose in front of the university seal. Proud of our boy, Callista had captioned it. My brother stood grinning next to him, arm around his shoulder. My parents, beaming, each holding a bouquet. Even Callista had shown up for the photo op, standing like she was part of the academic board. No one had mentioned it to me. I wasn't invited, not even notified. That might have stung less if I hadn't helped pay for it. $15,000, quietly transferred in 3 installments over 2 years. When my brother needed help, he'd called me, not the parents. You're the only one who understands financial planning, he'd said. And now? I didn't even rate a folding chair in the crowd. I remember hovering over the keyboard typing, "Congrats, so proud of him," but then deleting it. What was the point? I wasn't part of the picture. I wasn't part of the story. I was just the silent donor behind the diploma. Fast forward to November. A white envelope arrived, hand-addressed. I smiled, until I opened it. The Addams family Christmas card. There they were. Mom, Dad, Callista, my brother, his wife, the nephew whose education I'd funded, and their golden retriever, Max. They were all dressed in matching sweaters, standing in front of a fake fireplace at some studio that specialized in holiday portraits. At the bottom, it read, "Wishing you warmth and joy, from all of us." All of us. Except me. I flipped the card over. Maybe there was a personal message. A note scribbled in by Mom. Nothing. Not even my name. I wasn't just missing from the photo. I was missing from the family. That realization didn't feel like a punch. It felt like slow frostbite. You don't notice it right away, but then you lose feeling, and when sensation comes back, it burns. That night, I didn't cry. I just poured myself a glass of red, sat by the window, and watched the neighbors string up their lights. A family across the street was decorating their tree, kids running around, arguing about ornaments. I couldn't hear the words, but the energy was unmistakable, chaotic, imperfect, but present. I didn't want their chaos. I just wanted honesty, presence, something real. But real had never been part of our family brand. We preferred polish over truth, and I'd been complicit in that for years, paying for the shine, even as it dulled me. Then came Alex. We'd been seeing each other for about a year. A kind man, quiet, thoughtful, with a dry wit that took time to appreciate. He was a software engineer who loved classic vinyl and overwatered his houseplants. We met through a mutual friend and slowly built something that felt solid, not dramatic. Not fireworks, just a kind of companionship that felt possible. Until it didn't. He started pulling away, first in small ways, canceling plans with vague excuses, taking longer to reply to texts. Then one night, over dinner, he looked across the table and said, "I feel like you're always holding something back, like there's a wall I can't get through." I'd heard versions of that before. I asked what he meant. He hesitated, then added, "Your mom told me you're distant, like you use money to keep people from seeing who you really are." I blinked. "My mom told you that?" He nodded, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "It came up when she and I talked after your birthday dinner. She said she worries you don't let people in." That birthday dinner, I'd paid for it, cooked, cleaned. My mother hadn't brought a thing, and apparently, she'd brought her opinion instead. I nodded slowly, even as the inside of me broke a little more. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't call him back either. Some walls aren't built to keep people out. They're built to stop the bleeding. Weeks passed. Alex drifted completely. We didn't officially break up. We just stopped, like a program left running until it crashed. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. These weren't accidents. They were patterns. Every time I edged closer to building something outside the family, someone would step in, not with care, but with sabotage dressed as concern. They didn't want me happy. They wanted me useful, and happy people get boundaries. Happy people say no. Happy people stop paying. They couldn't have that. So they pulled me back, through guilt, through silence, through carefully placed words behind my back. That's when I went to the back closet and pulled out the scrapbook I hadn't touched in years. It smelled like old paper and lavender, faint, but still there. Inside were pictures I never framed, letters I never sent, receipts from trips where I'd paid for everyone but was cropped out of every photo. It was a museum of my erasure. I ran my fingers over a photo of me at 16, holding my nephew when he was a baby. My eyes were tired, but I was smiling. Back then, I thought I was building something lasting. Turns out, I was just scaffolding for everyone else's story. I closed the book and placed it back in the drawer, locked it, walked to my laptop, opened a new folder. Evidence. Because I wasn't invisible, I was erased. I had closed the scrapbook and locked the drawer just before midnight. I sat there for a few more minutes, letting my breathing slow, feeling the silence in the room like it had grown legs and settled across from me. The apartment was dark, except for the soft blue glow from my laptop, still open, still waiting. I stood up, poured a glass of water, and was just about to turn off the lights when the knock came at the door. It wasn't a person, just a package. I bent down to pick it up, puzzled. No return address, just my name, handwritten in that blocky, unmistakable scrawl. My brother's. Inside was a stack of envelopes, bills, and notices, most of them unopened. One stood out, a thick letter from a mortgage company I didn't recognize. The words on the first page felt like a punch to the gut. Past due notification, joint loan agreement. Borrower, Michael Adams. Co-signer, Madeline Adams. I read it again, then again. Joint loan? My stomach tightened as I scanned the property address. It was their current home, the one I had visited once, back when they first moved in. The one with the blue shutters and the granite kitchen counters Callista had gushed about. I'd never signed anything. I sat back down, heart pounding, and logged into my credit report. There it was. Listed in plain sight, a mortgage account under my name, opened 18 months earlier. They'd used me. They signed my name. They used my credit. And they never told me. The next morning, I didn't even make coffee. I sat down at my desk, phone in hand, and called the lender directly. The call took over an hour. I was passed from one department to another, verified and re-verified, and finally, a soft-spoken woman named Carla read off the application file. Yes, Ms. Adams, your name is listed as co-signer. It was filed electronically. The application was submitted under a joint request, Michael Adams and Callista Adams. I didn't speak for a moment. And there's no signature from me? I asked quietly. Well, the signature is electronic, she said hesitantly. But yes, it was submitted from a verified IP address and device linked to your email. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at my screen. They forged me. Or worse, they'd had access to my old login from when I helped them refinance their first car years ago. Maybe they'd never changed the credentials. I opened a new document on my desktop and titled it, Fraud and Family, Where They Collide. Then, as if the universe wasn't done yet, 2 days later, I got a call from my bank. My credit utilization had spiked. Something about a flagged transaction. At first, I assumed it was fraud. Stranger fraud. The kind that comes from a hacked card or a skimmer at the gas pump. But when I pulled the report, it wasn't some anonymous thief. It was another card. Under my name. Secondary user. $12,000 balance. I didn't even recognize the card number. When I called to inquire, they verified everything. Billing address, user profile, purchase history. It wasn't random. The primary cardholder, Callista. The purchases weren't hard to track. Nordstrom, Anthropologie, Restoration Hardware, even a weekend stay at a spa in Napa. I remembered that trip. She posted about it on Instagram. Treat yourself, she'd written, with a boomerang of champagne flutes clinking. I had no idea I'd footed the bill. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't scream. It just sits. It builds. It turns every warm memory cold, every thank you ever received into a retroactive lie. I had always been the financially stable one. I'd taken care of my credit, built my score like a fortress. I never asked anyone for a dime, not even when I was working 2 jobs after college to pay off student loans. And now, they'd turned me into their open bar. No, not even that. I was the spare key they never returned. The account they thought I'd never check. The silent engine that kept their lives running while they posted curated versions of themselves online. I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. Instead, I did what I knew best. I documented every screenshot, every statement, every email and call log. I organized it into folders, color-coded by offense, mortgage fraud, identity theft, misuse of funds. I gave them so many chances to be honest. I let things slide for years. I excused oversight. I rationalized guilt-tripping as love. But this was premeditated. You don't accidentally sign someone else onto a home loan. You don't mistakenly use their name for a luxury card. You don't forget to tell your sister she's now financially entangled with your mortgage. This was theft with a family face. So I emailed an attorney I'd once helped with her small business taxes. Her name was Monica. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but I trusted her. Subject line, urgent, family fraud case. Body, I need help, and I have documentation. Then I picked up my phone and texted Callista directly. You crossed a line, fix it now, or I will. I didn't wait for a response. I placed the phone face down, took a deep breath, and opened another tab. Search term, legal consequences of identity fraud, family member. Because if they thought I'd stay quiet just because we shared DNA, they hadn't been paying attention. By the time I finished typing Phase 1, freeze everything, the sun had started its slow climb over the Seattle skyline. I sat at my desk without moving, letting the quiet settle. Not the peaceful kind, more like the stillness before a storm. My hands rested on the keyboard, but my chest felt heavy, tight, like someone had stacked bricks on it while I wasn't looking. I glanced at the date on my screen. March 3rd, exactly 1 week before Mom's 66th birthday. I'd already paid the deposit on the restaurant weeks ago, an Italian place in Bellevue she liked to talk about but had never actually gone to. She'd mentioned it casually during one of our Sunday calls. You know, I've always wanted to try that place with the wood-fired pizzas and the wine wall. Seems fancy, though. I remembered how she said it, like a wish she hadn't meant anyone to grant. Of course, I took it as a cue, $950. 14 people. Private room, wine pairings, dessert course. Everything arranged, every detail covered. And like always, no one offered to split the bill. No one even asked how much it cost. The night of the dinner arrived, and I showed up early, as usual. Checked in with the hostess, made sure the name cards were printed right. I wore a navy dress, simple, appropriate, nothing too flashy. By 7:15, the family had arrived. My brother and his wife were first, followed by Callista, who made sure to loudly announce she was so exhausted from filming content all day. Mom walked in last, linking arms with Dad. She looked nice, light pink blouse, fresh blowout. She lit up when she saw the room, eyes wide like a child. "Oh, Maddie," she said, "you didn't have to go all out." But that was all she said. Nothing more. No hug, no thank you. Just a brief acknowledgement before she turned to greet Callista. Dinner went as I expected. Callista dominated the table conversation, telling a story about how she got into a shouting match with a brand manager who didn't understand her aesthetic. Dad chimed in occasionally with gripes about politics. My brother mostly stayed on his phone. At one point, the waiter brought over a bottle of Brunello and offered to pour. Callista raised her glass. "To Mom," she said, eyes glimmering. "The backbone of this family." Everyone clinked glasses. Mom stood, glass in hand. "I just want to say how grateful I am to have all of you here tonight," she began. "Family is everything, and I feel so lucky to have kids who take such good care of me." She looked directly at Callista, especially Callista, who organized this whole evening. Callista smiled modestly. Everyone applauded. I sat still, the corners of my mouth fixed in a polite curve. I didn't correct her, didn't say a word, just lifted my glass, took a sip, and reminded myself to breathe. After dessert, I slipped out quietly. No goodbyes. Just a nod to the waiter and a signed receipt for the full balance, plus tip. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of numb routine. Work, groceries, laundry. I told myself I'd imagined it, that maybe Mom had just gotten confused, that maybe Callista really had made a few phone calls, and Mom had mistaken effort for execution. But then, on a rainy Thursday morning, there was a knock on my door. It was Mom. She was holding an envelope. "Sweetheart," she said, stepping inside like she owned the place. "We're a little tight this month, just until next paycheck. You know how it goes." I didn't ask for details. I didn't argue. I opened my desk drawer, pulled out the checkbook, and wrote a check for $3,200. I handed it to her without a word. She smiled. "You've always been the responsible one." Then she walked out. I watched from the window as she got into her car. I saw her toss the envelope into the back seat without even looking at it. No care, no gratitude, just expectation. Her face, when she looked in the rearview mirror, was blank. Cold, not angry, not ashamed, just done with me, as if I were a clerk handing her a withdrawal. That image stuck with me the rest of the day. That night, I sat back down at my desk and opened the file I'd labeled Final Line. I added 2 new entries. March 10th, Mom's birthday dinner, $1,150 March 24th. Emergency check for bills, $3,200. Total so far. Too much, emotionally and otherwise. I stared at the list, the names, the dates, the numbers, and I realized something I hadn't been willing to admit until now. They weren't just ungrateful, they were strategic. They knew the buttons to press. The right blend of guilt and omission, the soft reminders of obligation, the subtle digs, the You've always been the stable one, said like praise, but loaded like a weapon, and I kept letting them, over and over. Why? Because I wanted to be needed. Because being needed made me feel loved. Because the illusion of importance was easier than the truth of being optional, but not anymore. I closed the document and opened a new one. Title: Phase 1. Freeze everything. I typed the first step. Cancel all auto payments connected to their accounts. Second step: remove myself from shared utilities. Third: lock down credit reports. This wasn't petty. This wasn't revenge. This was survival. This time, I wouldn't warn them twice. I woke up that morning before the alarm went off. There was no sound outside, no email pinging, no buzzing texts, just the quiet that comes before something decisive, a different kind of silence than the ones they used to shut me out. This one was mine, controlled, chosen. I sat down at my kitchen table at exactly 7 o'clock a.m., mug of black coffee beside me, laptop already powered up. I had slept in workout clothes, not because I planned to exercise, but because they were the closest thing to armor I owned. 12 tabs were open across the top of my browser: banking, utilities, credit card dashboards, the family phone plan. All accounts I had managed, funded, or kept from falling apart over the years. Each one was a small anchor tethering me to them. Today, I was cutting every cord. I started with the auto pays: water, gas, electricity, all billed through my credit card, all set to renew on the 15th. A few clicks, and the recurring payments were gone. One of the utilities prompted me, "Are you sure you want to disable automatic billing for this account?" Yes, I was sure. No warning, no announcements, just silence, like they taught me. Next came the shared family phone plan. 4 lines: mine, my brother's, my parents', and Callista's. I'd added them years ago when I qualified for a corporate discount and wanted to help cut their bills. They never once paid me back for their share. I called the provider. "I'd like to remove all secondary users on this account effective immediately. Would you like to notify them of the changes?" the rep asked politely. "No, thank you. They'll figure it out." I continued, steady and calm. Insurance policies, canceled. Streaming services, cut off. Old forgotten subscriptions tied to my cards, deleted. By 11 o'clock a.m., the spreadsheet labeled Phase 1, Freeze Everything, had every item checked off. At exactly 12:07 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Callista. "Hey, what's up with the Wi-Fi? Ours just cut out. Are you having issues too?" I stared at her message, not because I was surprised, but because of the entitlement packed into so few words. 12 minutes later, my brother texted, "Insurance isn't working. I got pulled over and they said the policy doesn't show coverage. What's going on?" I didn't reply. 15 minutes after that, Mom called, twice. Left a voicemail the third time. "Madeline, did you forget the electric bill again? The power's acting weird. I told you last month not to cut it so close." I closed the message without listening to the rest. Instead, I went back to my desk, opened the spreadsheet, and typed in bold, Phase 1, complete. The only sound in the apartment was the soft clicking of my keyboard. Each keystroke felt like regaining a piece of myself I hadn't realized I'd given away. By mid-afternoon, I changed into a blazer and headed across town to a small law office just east of Capitol Hill. Monica, the attorney I'd emailed 2 days earlier, greeted me at the door. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but when she saw me, she didn't ask unnecessary questions. She knew I wasn't here for tea. We sat in her office, surrounded by towering shelves of tax codes and binders labeled with color-coded tape. "I read through your documents," she began, flipping open a manila folder. "Mortgage co-signing without consent, fraudulent credit card use. They're both prosecutable offenses." I nodded once. "I'm not suing my family. I'm suing the people who forgot I was family." Her gaze softened. "You're doing the right thing, Madeline. The emotional part might sting, but this is about protecting your future." We signed the forms, filed the paperwork. And just like that, the narrative shifted. I wasn't just the responsible daughter anymore. I was the plaintiff. On the walk home, I stopped by a small coffee shop on the corner, ordered an iced tea, sat by the window, and watched the street for a while. Outside, people rushed by with purpose, jackets zipped, heads bowed against the wind. I used to move like that, quiet, unassuming, invisible. Now, I was choosing a different pace. That evening, Callista posted a new story to Instagram. It showed a photo of a candlelit bathtub, captioned, "Some people can't handle boundaries." Sad when family turns on you. I laughed out loud in my kitchen. Boundaries. Callista had never met a boundary she didn't bulldoze. I took a screenshot, saved it in a new folder titled Image Management, then closed the app. The more she tried to control the narrative online, the easier it was to document the lies. My phone buzzed again, a string of missed messages. Some were from my mother, questions disguised as guilt. Some from my brother, accusations laced with indignation. And Callista's, of course, mixed between passive-aggressive comments and outright insults. I didn't read any of them. I didn't need to. They weren't communicating. They were reacting, panicking, because the ATM was no longer operational. I spent the rest of the night on my porch, wrapped in an old blanket, sipping hot tea. The city lights stretched out before me, flickering through the mist. I could hear the hum of traffic, the occasional siren in the distance, but here, in this moment, I felt still. Not quiet like before, not ignored. Still, like a foundation being rebuilt after demolition. My phone screen lit up again. 10 new notifications. I turned it face down and whispered into the air, almost amused. That was only phase 1. The morning after I'd shut everything down, I woke up to find the world had already started unraveling without me lifting another finger. I didn't feel triumphant, just clear. Detached maybe, but not numb. Clarity has a way of making things sharper, not softer. Around 9 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Brianna, a friend of a friend, someone who followed Callista on Instagram mostly for the drama, not the content. She'd sent me a screenshot of a post that had just gone viral, courtesy of a new anonymous account called Truth Teller Fam. The post was simple but devastating, 2 images side by side. On the left, a glossy photo of Callista in a spa robe, glass of champagne in hand, captioned, "Hard work deserves hard rest, #blessed, #grind culture." On the right, a screenshot of a credit card bill, with my name at the top and the same spa listed as a $1,287 charge. The caption read, "Wonder who really paid for your hard-earned self-care." Within an hour, the comments section had exploded. Some defended her, most didn't. "That card ain't yours, sis. Must be nice to rest on your sister's back." So this is what family loyalty looks like now? Callista disabled comments by 10:17 a.m. By 10:23, the post was gone altogether, but the internet doesn't forget. I sat at my kitchen counter, quietly watching it unfold. I didn't share it, didn't comment, didn't like. I didn't need to. They had done it to themselves. That afternoon, the family group chat blew up. I hadn't checked it in weeks, but my curiosity got the better of me. I opened it just in time to see Callista typing, 3 dots blinking in furious rhythm, before she finally sent, "Madeline, this is disgusting. You're dragging me publicly. Really? Over what? A few spa days? A few spa days. That charge alone would have covered groceries for a struggling family of 4 for a month. But sure, a few spa days." Before I could type anything, my brother chimed in, "You've lost your mind. You could have just talked to us like an adult." Like an adult? As if I hadn't spent years talking, quietly, calmly, asking, explaining, paying, covering, absorbing. I took a breath, typed slowly. "I paid for that mind, remember? You all rented it with guilt." Then I hit leave group. Just like that, the thread disappeared from my screen. No more incoming attacks disguised as concern. No more obligation to reply. No more mental rent owed. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees outside my window, I stood at my kitchen sink, rinsing out a cup, when a memory hit me so hard I had to grip the edge of the counter. 2 months earlier, I'd ended up in the ER with what I thought was food poisoning. Turned out to be appendicitis. I was admitted overnight, hooked up to fluids, and told I might need emergency surgery if things didn't improve by morning. I texted the family group chat. Simple. Hey, just wanted to let you know I'm in the hospital. We'll update when I know more. Silence. 12 hours passed. Nothing. By hour 36, my phone finally buzzed. It was Callista. Sorry. Been crazy busy. Let us know if you need anything. Need anything? Just acknowledgement would have sufficed. A phone call. A voice. I didn't reply then. I never brought it up. Because I knew the truth even before that hospital room. They always showed up when they needed something. Not when I did. Back in the present, I walked over to the window, phone in hand, and stared out. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the screen was still. No notifications, no demands, no guilt bombs wrapped in checking in. I opened my contacts, deleted one name after another. Mom, Dad, Michael, Callista. Each deletion felt like pulling a splinter, long overdue. When I finished, I set the phone down and exhaled. You were never really there to begin with, I said aloud. Not to the phone, not to the air, to myself. Because that truth had sat just beneath my skin for years, waiting to be spoken. That night, I printed out the full documentation Monica and I had built over the last few weeks. Proof of fraud, the misuse of my financial information, screenshots of messages, spreadsheets of unacknowledged payments. I clipped the documents neatly into a binder, slid it into a case, and carried it over to my desk. As I passed by the mirror in the hallway, I caught my reflection. I paused, met my own gaze. Not the face of a daughter, not a sister, not the dependable one, just Madeline, and that was enough. I leaned in slightly, not smiling, just steady. Next stop, court. Then, after a brief pause, let's see how strong their lies are under oath. I stood in front of the mirror a moment longer than necessary, the words I'd just spoken still lingering in the air. Let's see how strong their lies are under oath. My reflection didn't blink, didn't flinch. There was no tremor in my voice, no second-guessing in my gaze. That version of me, the one who apologized first, who gave the benefit of the doubt, who mistook guilt for loyalty, was long gone. The following day, Seattle's sky matched the mood I carried. It drizzled relentlessly, the kind of rain that soaked through your coat and into your bones before you realized you were cold. I'd been packing for most of the morning, taping boxes shut with quiet precision, sorting what I'd keep and what I'd leave behind. My condo was starting to look empty, not lonely, just cleansed. Around 3 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find my parents standing there, huddled beneath a shared umbrella. My father looked thinner, his coat hanging looser on his shoulders than I remembered. My mother, mascara smudged under her eyes, stepped forward first. "Madeline," she said softly, like she was trying not to sound too desperate. I didn't speak. I didn't move aside. She began, voice cracking. "We're in a tough spot. The mortgage is behind. Utilities, too. We didn't know how bad it was until the past due notices started piling up." My father cleared his throat, avoiding eye contact. "We're going to lose the house." I folded my arms. "I'm not your lender." Her hands trembled as she reached out to touch my arm. "You can't be serious about this. You're really going to turn your back on us? On your family?" My voice was steady. "You turned your back on me a long time ago. You just didn't expect the bank to notice." The silence between us felt louder than the rain. "I'm your mother," she whispered. "No," I said gently. "You're someone who needed a checkbook more than a daughter." She blinked rapidly, as if she hadn't expected me to say it out loud. Maybe she hadn't. I stepped back into the apartment, walked to my desk, and returned with an envelope. I handed it to her. She looked down, confused. Slowly, she opened it and pulled out a check written for $0. Taped to it was a small yellow sticky note that read, "This is all that's left of my forgiveness fund." She didn't say a word, just stared. My father finally stepped forward, but when our eyes met, he stopped himself. They didn't fight. They didn't argue. They just turned and walked back toward the elevator, umbrella between them, my mother clutching the envelope like it might still turn into money if she held it long enough. The door clicked shut behind me. I stood there for a few minutes, breathing, not crying, not because I wasn't sad, but because the sadness had expired. It had ripened into something else, resolve. Later that evening, I opened my laptop and typed one last email to the family. Subject: Final disconnection. Effective immediately, I am no longer a participant in this family structure. Please do not contact me for any future personal or financial matters. Any attempts to communicate beyond this message will be handled through legal counsel. This is not an act of cruelty. It is a boundary long overdue. I hit send. There was no satisfaction, just completion. A full stop. The next day, Monica's office confirmed that court documents had been officially served to Callista and my brother's household. Fraud, credit abuse, misrepresentation. I didn't attend the delivery. That wasn't my role anymore. Let them be shocked. Let them spin. Let them post passive-aggressive quotes and cryptic captions. I wouldn't read them. I had blocked them all, scrubbed them from my digital life, cleared their fingerprints from every platform. I didn't need to scream. I had evidence, and silence louder than rage. That night, after packing my final suitcase, I booked a one-way flight to Santa Cruz. Nothing fancy, no big farewell, just a new destination and an old craving for peace. Before I left, I stood in the doorway of my condo one last time. The space that had held my breakdowns, my rebuilds, my spreadsheets of betrayal and folders of truth. I left the keys on the counter, no note attached. I owed no explanation. As I pulled the door closed, my phone buzzed with one last notification from a delivery app. An automated message asking if I was satisfied with my order. I chuckled. Satisfied? No. But finally free? Yes. Voice soft, almost amused, I whispered. They told me not to contact them. I finally agreed. The flight from Seattle had been quiet. Not the heavy, awkward quiet of tension or avoidance, but the kind that settles in when there's nothing more to defend. I didn't talk to the woman next to me. I didn't ask for snacks or ginger ale. I kept the window shade open and just watched. The clouds rolled by slowly, each one like a curtain drawn between who I had been and who I was becoming. No dramatic playlist in my ears, no rereading of old texts, just silence, space. By the time we landed in San Jose, the sun was low but steady, dipping just enough to warm the tarmac without burning it. No gray skies, no threat of rain, just light, the kind of light that felt honest. I found my rideshare outside baggage claim. The driver didn't say much beyond confirming my name. No small talk, no playlist, no unnecessary warmth. Perfect. We wound down Highway 17 as the sun began to dip behind the hills, turning the landscape gold, then blue. Trees blurred past the window in watercolor streaks. My reflection stared back at me, softened, quieter, unfamiliar in a way that felt new instead of wrong. Then I smelled it. Salt. The unmistakable shift in the air that tells you the ocean is close, that something is opening up. By the time we arrived at the cottage I'd rented, just a few blocks from the Santa Cruz boardwalk, the breeze had cooled, not cold, but clean. The kind of chill that wakes you up just enough to remember where you are. I stepped out of the car, key in hand, realtor's tag still dangling from the fob like a new chapter with a receipt. The cottage was small, no frills, one bedroom, white siding, a low porch, and wild rosemary lining the fence. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and stood there in the entry for a long moment. Hardwood floors, clean white walls, a tiny built-in bookshelf tucked beside a stone fireplace. It wasn't big, it wasn't luxury, but it was mine. No shared lease, no emergency contacts I hadn't consented to, no keys that belonged to anyone but me. The next morning, I walked to a small cafe near the wharf and ordered a black coffee. No cream, no sugar, just as it came. I took it to a bench that faced the water and sat, cup nestled between both hands, steam curling around my fingers. The gulls cried overhead. Joggers passed behind me. Somewhere, someone was playing guitar. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt still. No pings, no urgent calls or digital reminders of guilt, no unspoken obligations hanging over me like laundry lines. I wasn't waiting on an apology that wouldn't come. I wasn't waiting to be told I was being too sensitive. No one was watching for my reaction or holding out their hand for another favor. For once, no one was waiting on me, and I wasn't waiting on them. The bookstore happened by accident, or maybe, like all good things, it happened in the only way it could have. I'd wandered in one afternoon, looking for an out-of-print novel my grandfather used to read to me. I remembered the cover, cracked spine, soft corners, his voice trailing off when he got too tired to finish the final chapters. The woman behind the counter looked up as I entered. Late 60s, graying hair in a braid, reading glasses perched low on her nose. "You look like someone who's used to being talked over," she said. I blinked. Didn't respond, just nodded. "Well," she continued, setting her tea aside, "I run this place quietly. If you ever want a spot to disappear and still be seen, come back." I did. Within 2 weeks, I was covering the Saturday morning shift. Within 2 months, Mary Beth had cleared a corner behind the register and said, "That stool's yours now." She never asked about my past, never pried. She let me shelve books, host awkward poetry nights, and brew truly awful coffee for customers who didn't care. One afternoon, a teenage girl came in looking for a book for her grandmother. She was hesitant, fidgeting with her sleeves, like she thought the question itself might be wrong. I walked her to the right shelf, handed her a novel with a watercolor cover and a soft ending. Her eyes lit up. After she left, Mary Beth looked at me for a long moment. "You'd make a wonderful mother," she said. I didn't answer right away. "You remind me of my daughter," she added. Before I lost her, I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and whispered, "I never had a mother who saw me like that." She nodded once, didn't say anything more, but something settled between us that day, something honest, quiet, kind. In the cottage, I kept only one family photo. It sat on the mantel above the fireplace in a dark wood frame, just me and Grandpa. I was 5, holding a plastic shovel on the beach. He was kneeling beside me, smiling, sunburned, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. He was the only one who had seen me clearly, the only one who didn't measure my worth by what I could fix. He once told me, "You carry everyone, Maddie, but one day you need to carry yourself." It took me 32 years to understand what he meant. I stopped checking Callista's socials, didn't care whether the trial dragged on or disappeared in red tape. I heard whispers that my parents were staying with some cousin in Nevada, that my brother had picked up a second job to cover debts he couldn't explain, but I didn't investigate. I didn't chase down every loose end. I didn't need their closure. I needed my breath. Every night, I journaled by the fire, not always about them, sometimes just a note about what I'd noticed that day, the way fog rolled in off the cliffs at dusk, the hummingbird outside the kitchen window, the joke a stranger made in the grocery store that made me laugh without guilt. One night, I wrote, "I didn't lose a family. I lost a fantasy, an illusion I was told to chase until it broke me. And in its place, I found something better. I found peace, the kind that doesn't apologize for existing, the kind that doesn't demand interest." I signed it simply, Madeline, not the fixer, not the ATM, not the emotional insurance policy, just me. And that was enough. I didn't lose a family. I found myself. Sometimes, the hardest part of walking away isn't the silence that follows. It's realizing how long you stayed just to be used. Madeline's story isn't just about money. It's about self-worth, boundaries, and the quiet strength it takes to say, enough. Have you ever been treated like you only mattered when you gave something? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us how healing begins the moment we stop apologizing for protecting our peace.